The Dark Horizon. In the year 2079, Earth stood at the brink of disaster. The sky was dark, filled with swirling clouds that crackled with lightning. Beneath this ominous sky lay a planet known as Deathworld. It was a place of danger, with harsh landscapes, deadly creatures, and an atmosphere that made survival nearly impossible. For years, the planet had been a mystery, a warning to those who dared to explore its surface. But for Captain Sarah Lynn and her crew aboard the Dauntless, it was a call to adventure. Captain Sarah Lynn was a woman of strong character. With her short black hair and determined gaze, she inspired her crew. She had spent her life preparing for moments like this, honing her skills as a pilot and a leader. The Dauntless was her pride and joy, a sleek, powerful vessel equipped with advanced technology. It was designed for exploration and combat, a true testament to human ingenuity. As the crew gathered in the ship's command center, Sarah looked at each of them. They were a diverse group, each bringing unique skills to the mission. There was Lieutenant Mark, the ship's engineer, known for his quick thinking and ability to fix anything. Jenna, the communications officer, had an exceptional talent for languages and was great at making contact with other species. Finally, there was Tom, the security officer, whose strength and combat skills made him a force to be reckoned with. "Listen up, everyone," Sarah called out, her voice steady and clear. "We have received a distress signal from a research team on Deathworld. They are stranded and need our help. We need to be quick, but we also need to be cautious. This planet is dangerous, and we must be prepared for anything." The crew nodded, a mix of excitement and fear in their eyes. They all knew the risks of this mission. Deathworld was notorious for its hostile environment. Many who had attempted to explore it had never returned. However, the thought of rescuing the research team ignited a spark of determination in their hearts. Mark checked the ship's systems. "All systems are go, Captain. We're ready to launch whenever you are." Sarah smiled at him. "Thank you, Mark. Let's make this happen." As the Dauntless lifted off the ground, the crew felt a thrill of excitement. The ship soared into the sky, breaking through the clouds into the vastness of space. The beauty of the stars and planets outside the window reminded them of why they took such risks. They were explorers, adventurers, and warriors for humanity. The journey to Deathworld was tense but filled with purpose. As they approached the planet, the swirling storms came into view, casting shadows over the rugged landscape. It looked foreboding, as if the planet itself were a guardian protecting its secrets. "Prepare for atmospheric entry," Sarah commanded, her voice calm. The crew sprang into action, securing their stations and making final checks. The ship shuddered as it broke through the clouds, the view outside transforming into a chaotic blend of storms and jagged mountains. Once they were through the atmosphere, Sarah struggled to maintain control. The ship rocked violently, but she kept her focus. "Hold tight, everyone," she shouted. "We're almost through." After what felt like an eternity, they emerged into relative calm. The landscape of Deathworld sprawled below them, mountains looming like giants and valleys shrouded in fog. Sarah scanned for the location of the distress signal. "There it is," she said, pointing to a flickering dot on the ship's radar. "Let's move." As they descended, the crew's anticipation grew. They could see the research team's small base nestled in a valley, surrounded by steep cliffs and treacherous terrain. Sarah brought the Dauntless down gently, her heart pounding. They had arrived, but the real challenge lay ahead. Once the ship landed, Sarah turned to her crew. "Remember, stay alert. This planet is unpredictable. We stick together, no matter what." They gathered their gear suits designed to protect them from the toxic atmosphere and various tools for rescue and combat. Tom loaded his weapons, ensuring he was prepared for any confrontation. Jenna checked the communication devices, ready to keep in contact with the ship. "Let's move," Sarah commanded, leading the way out of the ship. As the hatch opened, the crew stepped onto the surface of Deathworld. The air was thick and heavy, filled with an unsettling silence. The ground was uneven, rocky, and dotted with strange plants that glowed faintly. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the valley, sending chills down their spines. The crew froze, eyes wide, as the sound grew louder. "What was that?" Mark whispered, gripping his tool tightly. "Stay close," Sarah ordered, scanning the surroundings. "We need to find the research team quickly." Just then, a massive creature emerged from the shadows, a beast with sharp claws and glowing eyes. It stared at them with a predatory gaze. The crew instinctively fell into formation, ready to fight or flee as necessary. "Get back to the ship," Sarah shouted, raising her weapon. But there was no time to retreat. They were here to save lives, and they would not back down now. With courage fueling their hearts, they prepared to confront the beast that stood between them and their mission. The battle for survival had begun, and they were determined to face whatever came their way. This was the beginning of their fight, a fight that would test their limits and redefine what it meant to be human in the face of overwhelming odds. Into the depths. The growl of the creature echoed ominously in the valley, sending vibrations through the ground. Captain Sarah Lynn stood firm, her heart racing, but her mind focused. The Dauntless was their home, and they would not let a beast drive them away from their mission. "Tom, take point," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "Mark and Jenna, stay close. We need to find the research team." Tom nodded, raising his weapon as he took a cautious step forward. The creature, a hulking mass of muscle and scales, shifted its weight, preparing to charge. Sarah's instincts kicked in. They had to move quickly. "On my mark," Sarah said, her eyes locked on the creature. 3, 2, 1, now." As she shouted the command, Tom lunged forward, firing a warning shot at the creature. The blast lit up the gloomy atmosphere, momentarily illuminating the beast's fierce features. It roared in response, its claws scraping against the rocky ground as it lunged toward Tom. "Fall back," Sarah shouted, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Mark quickly activated a flash grenade, throwing it towards the beast. The explosion filled the air with blinding light and a deafening bang, momentarily stunning the creature. "Now, go," Sarah yelled, and the team sprinted towards the research base. The rocky terrain was treacherous, but they navigated it with practiced ease, their training kicking in. Jenna stayed close to Sarah, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger. "I hope the research team is okay," Jenna shouted, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "They have to be," Sarah replied, determination igniting her words. "We're not leaving without them." As they approached the base, they could see signs of struggle. The entrance was damaged, and debris was scattered everywhere. It was clear that the research team had encountered trouble, and it only fueled their urgency. "Mark, check for survivors," Sarah commanded. "Jenna, stay on comms with the ship. We need backup if things go south." Mark nodded and moved toward the entrance, his heart pounding as he stepped over the debris. He called out, "Is anyone here?" His voice echoed in the eerie silence, but there was no response. Sarah followed closely, her weapon raised. "Be careful," she warned. "We don't know what's in here." As they entered the dimly lit base, the sight that greeted them was unsettling. Equipment lay scattered, papers fluttered in the cold air, and the walls were marked with claw marks. "This place was torn apart," Jenna murmured, her voice shaking slightly. "Look," Tom pointed to a group of flickering lights in the corner of the room. It was a communications panel, still operational. "Jenna, see if you can get it working," Sarah instructed, feeling a flicker of hope. If they could contact the research team, they might still find survivors. While Jenna hurried to the panel, Sarah and Tom continued to search the area. "We need to find out what happened," Sarah said, searching through the debris for clues. Suddenly, she spotted a torn piece of a research report. The words "encounter" and "danger" stood out in bold letters, sending chills down her spine. "Captain, Jenna called out, excitement in her voice. I think I can get this working. Good. Keep trying. Sarah replied, her focus divided between the panel and the dark corners of the room. Tom, help her. As they worked, Sarah felt a growing sense of unease. The silence was deafening, and it made her skin crawl. What if they didn't make it? She wondered, but quickly shook the thought away. They had to remain hopeful. Just then, a soft voice came through the comm panel. Hello? Is anyone there? It was faint but unmistakable. Yes, this is Captain Sarah Lynn of the Dauntless. Where are you? Sarah replied, her heart racing with hope. We're trapped. The creature attacked us. We're hiding in the lab. The voice crackled. We need help. Stay calm. We're coming to get you. Sarah reassured. Can you tell us how many of you are there? 3 of us. We're barricaded, but we don't know how long we can hold out. Understood. We're on our way, Sarah said, exchanging glances with Tom and Jenna. We have a location. Let's move. As they dashed out of the base, Sarah felt a surge of determination. They were not just here to save lives. They were here to prove humanity's strength. They would not let fear dictate their actions. The path to the lab was filled with obstacles. The creature they had startled earlier could be lurking anywhere, but they pressed on. Stay focused, Sarah called out, her voice cutting through the tension. Suddenly, the growl returned, echoing through the hallways, and Sarah's heart sank. It's close, she warned. Hurry. As they rounded a corner, they spotted a barricaded door. It was the lab, and the 3 researchers were inside, their faces pale with fear. We're here, Sarah shouted, rushing forward. Tom and Mark took positions on either side of the door, ready for anything. Sarah banged on the door. Open up. It's us. The door creaked open slowly, and the researchers peered out, relief flooding their faces. Thank God. We thought we were done for. One of them exclaimed. Come on. We need to get you out of here, Sarah said, waving them outside. But just as they stepped out, the creature emerged from the shadows, blocking their escape. Its eyes gleamed with hunger, and its claws dripped with blood. The team froze, fear gripping them as the beast prepared to attack. Get inside. Now, Sarah shouted, urging the researchers to safety. As the creature charged, Sarah raised her weapon, heart racing. This was it, the moment they had prepared for. They would face this monster together, united in their fight for survival. The battle was far from over, and they were determined to emerge victorious. The unyielding fight. The creature's roar filled the air, a primal sound that reverberated through the narrow hallway of the lab. Captain Sarah Lynn's pulse quickened as adrenaline surged through her veins. The 3 researchers, pale and shaken, clung to one another as they pressed against the doorframe, their eyes wide with fear. Stay behind us, Sarah shouted, her voice steady despite the chaos. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. They had to protect these lives at all costs. Tom and Mark took their positions, weapons ready. The creature, a grotesque behemoth with scales glistening under the dim lights, advanced with a terrifying grace. Its massive claws clicked against the metal floor, and its eyes locked onto Sarah, filled with primal hunger. Fire on my command, Sarah ordered, raising her weapon. We can't let it breach the lab. As the creature lunged forward, Sarah pulled the trigger, sending a volley of plasma shots into its direction. The bright bolts struck true, hitting the beast's side. It let out a thunderous roar, stumbling back, but quickly regaining its footing. The sound of its fury echoed through the corridor, shaking the very walls of the lab. Keep firing, Tom shouted, his finger squeezing the trigger as he unleashed another barrage. The shots hit the creature's thick hide, sizzling upon impact, but it barely seemed to notice the pain. Get inside now, Mark urged the researchers. We need to regroup. The team of scientists scrambled back into the lab, but Sarah and her crew held the line. They couldn't afford to let the creature breach their defenses. The monstrous figure charged again, its massive jaws snapping dangerously close. "Watch out," Sarah yelled as the beast lunged for Mark, who barely dodged to the side. The beast crashed into the wall, sending debris flying, but quickly turned to face its prey once more. "Keep moving," Sarah yelled to her team. "We need a better position." The group fell back, keeping their weapons trained on the beast as they retreated into the lab. It was now a game of survival, and Sarah was determined not to lose. "We need to trap it somehow," she said, glancing around the lab for anything that could help. "Maybe we can lure it into the containment area," Tom suggested, pointing towards a reinforced door at the far end of the lab. "If we can get it in there, we can seal it off." "Great idea. But we need to distract it first," Sarah replied, formulating a plan quickly. "Mark, Jenna, get the researchers to the containment area. Tom and I will hold it off. Once we lure it in, we'll shut the door." The team nodded, their resolve strengthening. They moved swiftly, guiding the researchers toward the safety of the containment area. Sarah and Tom stood firm, their backs against the wall, weapons aimed at the advancing creature. "Now," Sarah shouted, firing another round at the beast. It roared in anger, pivoting towards them. "Let's move," Tom yelled, darting sideways to draw the creature's attention. Sarah followed suit, firing continuously as they backed towards the door. The creature was relentless, snapping its jaws and lunging at them. "Over here, you ugly brute," Tom taunted, waving his arms to draw the beast in. It seemed to respond to his challenge, roaring as it charged after him. "Now, Sarah," Tom shouted as he reached the edge of the containment area. He ducked and rolled inside, and Sarah quickly followed, slamming the door shut behind them. The creature collided with the door, shaking it violently. "Seal it," Sarah commanded, her heart racing. Mark and Jenna quickly activated the locking mechanism, sealing the beast inside. They took a moment to catch their breath, hearts pounding as they leaned against the walls of the containment area. "Did we get it?" Jenna asked, her eyes wide with concern. "For now," Sarah replied, wiping sweat from her brow. "But it's only a temporary solution. We need to think of a way to neutralize it for good." Mark stepped forward, inspecting the equipment in the containment area. "There's a plasma containment unit here. If we can modify it, we might be able to overload it and create a blast strong enough to take the creature down." "That's risky," Tom said, concern etched on his face. "What if it breaks out before we can finish?" "We have no choice," Sarah said firmly. "We need to take the chance. If we don't eliminate it, it will hunt us down." As they gathered around the plasma containment unit, Sarah felt a sense of urgency. They had come too far to fail now. "Let's get to work," she said, determination fueling her voice. They worked quickly, modifying the equipment and preparing the overload sequence. Sarah kept a close watch on the door, knowing the beast was still alive and dangerous just on the other side. Every growl and thud sent shivers down her spine, reminding her of the threat they faced. After what felt like an eternity, the modifications were complete. The unit hummed ominously, indicating it was ready to go. "Are we sure this will work?" Jenna asked, her voice trembling slightly. "We have to believe it will," Sarah replied. "Once we activate it, we'll have to make a run for it. It's our best shot." "All right, let's do it," Tom said, steeling himself. They activated the overload sequence, and the unit began to glow brighter. "We need to get out of here," Sarah urged, feeling the air thicken with tension. As they turned to leave, the door shuddered violently. The creature was attacking again, desperate to escape its prison. "Run," Sarah shouted, pushing the researchers ahead of her. They dashed towards the exit as the door buckled under the force of the creature's onslaught. Just as they reached the door, it burst open, and the creature lunged forward, fury radiating from its every move. The team barely managed to dodge its massive jaws as they scrambled to safety. "Go, go, go," Sarah shouted, urgency pouring into her words. They'd raced through the narrow corridors, the sounds of destruction echoing behind them. The countdown continued, and they could hear the creature growling in the distance. Almost there, Mark called out as they neared the exit. Sarah could see the light of the outside world ahead, but they had to make it there before the creature caught up. Finally, they burst through the doors into the open air, gasping for breath. The ship was waiting for them, a beacon of hope against the dark horizon. But they knew the fight was far from over. The creature was still free, and they had to prepare for the final confrontation. "Get to the ship," Sarah commanded, adrenaline pumping through her body. They sprinted towards the Dauntless, determination etched on their faces. The battle for humanity's survival was only beginning, and Sarah was ready to face whatever came next. The battle begins. The air was thick with tension as the crew of the Dauntless gathered around the control panel, their eyes fixed on the display. The creature they had trapped was not just a beast. It was a symbol of humanity's fight for survival. Captain Sarah Lynn felt the weight of her command pressing down on her shoulders. They needed a plan, and they needed it fast. "Is the containment unit secure?" she asked, her voice steady as she turned to her team. "Yes, Captain," Mark confirmed, his fingers flying over the controls. "The plasma containment unit is holding. But we only have a limited amount of time before it overloads, and we lose power to the main systems. Then we need to make this count," Sarah replied. "We can't let it escape again. We have to lure it out into the open." Tom stepped forward, his expression serious. "How do we do that? It's already angry, and it's aware of us now. It's not going to be easy to draw it out." Sarah nodded, thinking quickly. "We'll need to create a diversion. If we can lure it towards the rear of the ship, we might be able to trap it in the cargo hold." "Sounds risky," Jenna chimed in, worry evident in her voice. "What if it turns on us?" "Risky is better than certain death," Sarah replied firmly. "We have to try. Get some explosives ready. We'll use them as bait." As the crew prepared, Sarah could feel the tension building. They had survived the initial encounter, but the real battle was just beginning. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the present moment. "Remember, we're fighting for each other and for humanity. We can't back down now." Once the explosives were set, they moved towards the cargo hold, weapons at the ready. Sarah glanced back at her team, their expressions a mix of fear and determination. She felt a surge of pride for her crew. They were standing together, ready to face whatever came next. "On my mark," Sarah said, her voice low and steady. "We'll place the explosives and then fall back. When it approaches, we'll detonate them." They crept towards the cargo hold, the tension palpable in the air. The creature could be heard moving around, its growls echoing through the ship. Sarah's heart raced as they entered the cargo hold, the massive space illuminated by the flickering lights overhead. "Place the charges here," she instructed, pointing to the far side of the hold. They moved quickly, setting the explosives in a way that would maximize the blast radius. As they finished, Sarah could feel the creature's presence drawing nearer, its growls growing louder. "Time to go," Tom said, his voice tense. They fell back, retreating towards the entrance as the creature emerged from the shadows, its eyes glinting with malice. "Now," Sarah shouted as they raced to the safety of the main deck. The creature lunged towards them, its massive claws tearing through the cargo hold like tissue paper. They barely managed to escape, slamming the door shut behind them. As they reached the control panel, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. "On my signal, Jenna." The creature roared, and Sarah could feel the ship tremble as it slammed against the door. "Now, detonate." The explosion rocked the ship, flames bursting from the cargo hold as debris flew in all directions. The sound of the blast echoed through the corridors, a thunderous reminder of the fight they were engaged in. "Did it work?" Mark shouted over the chaos, his eyes wide with anticipation. The crew watched anxiously as the smoke cleared. The creature was momentarily stunned, but it quickly regained its composure, shaking off the debris and roaring in anger. "It's still alive," Sarah shouted, disbelief washing over her. "We have to finish this. Get the weapons ready," Tom yelled, moving towards the armory. "We need everything we've got." As they armed themselves, Sarah's mind raced. They had done some damage, but it wasn't enough. "We need to hit it with everything," she said, her determination unwavering. "We can't let it get the upper hand." The crew moved swiftly, gathering weapons and preparing for the final confrontation. Sarah could feel the adrenaline surging through her body as they strategized. "We'll split into 2 teams. Mark, you and Jenna take the right flank. Tom and I will go left. We need to surround it and push it back." "Understood," Mark replied, nodding in agreement. As they prepared to engage the creature once more, Sarah felt a deep sense of purpose. They were not just fighting for their lives. They were fighting for the future of humanity. "Let's show it what we're made of," she said, her voice steady and filled with conviction. With a deep breath, they moved out, ready to face the creature. It was waiting for them, its eyes narrowing as they entered the hold. The air was thick with tension as they took their positions, weapons raised and ready to fire. "Now," Sarah shouted as they opened fire, a barrage of energy bolts lighting up the dark space. They pressed forward, determined to keep the creature off balance. Mark and Jenna flanked it from the right, while Sarah and Tom advanced from the left. The creature fought back, swinging its massive claws and snapping its jaws, but they were relentless. "We've got it," Tom shouted as they worked together, coordinating their attacks with precision. The creature was struggling, but it wasn't down yet. Sarah felt a surge of hope as they pressed their advantage. "Keep pushing. Don't let it breathe," she urged, her heart racing as they battled. The creature let out a final roar, a chilling sound that echoed through the hold as it stumbled, its strength waning. But just as victory seemed within reach, it gathered its last reserves of energy and charged forward, aiming for Sarah. "Watch out," Mark yelled, but it was too late. In a moment of sheer instinct, Sarah dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the creature's deadly jaws. She scrambled to her feet, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Fire!" she shouted, turning to shoot at the creature once more. It was now or never. With one final push, they unleashed everything they had left. The combined firepower overwhelmed the creature, and it finally collapsed to the ground with a thunderous crash, defeated. Panting and exhausted, the crew stood over the fallen beast, a mixture of relief and disbelief washing over them. They had done it. They had survived. "Is it really over?" Jenna asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "For now, at least, we have to remain vigilant. We're not safe yet." As they caught their breath, Sarah glanced around at her team. They had faced the darkness together, and they had emerged stronger. They were not just a crew. They were a family, united in their resolve to protect humanity and each other. "Let's get back to work," Sarah said, determination shining in her eyes. "There's still much to do, and we can't let our guard down." As they regrouped, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, Sarah felt a renewed sense of hope. They had proven that together, they could overcome anything. The fight for humanity was far from over, but they were prepared to face it head-on. A new threat. The crew of the Dauntless stood around the remains of the creature, their breaths heavy in the tense silence. The battle was over, but the victory felt bittersweet. Sarah Lynn, the captain, surveyed her team. They had come so far, but they all knew that this fight was just one battle in a much larger war. "Are we all okay?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the exhaustion coursing through her body. "I'm fine," Mark said, brushing dust off his uniform. "Just a few scratches, nothing to worry about." "Same here," Tom added, glancing at Jenna. "What about you?" "I'm shaken, but I'll be all right," she replied, her eyes scanning the cargo hold. "I just can't shake the feeling that this isn't over." Sarah nodded, understanding the unspoken fear hanging in the air. We need to assess the damage and make sure we're ready for whatever comes next. As they moved to the control room, Sarah couldn't help but think about the implications of what they had just faced. They had survived this encounter, but there were still unknown threats lurking in the galaxy. Mark, check our long-range scanners. I want to know if anything else is coming our way, Sarah ordered as they settled into their stations. Yes, Captain, Mark replied, his fingers flying across the control panel. The whirring of machinery filled the room as they awaited the results. Jenna, sitting beside him, watched the monitors with worried eyes. I hope we don't have another creature like that one out there. Me too, Tom added, crossing his arms. We barely made it out alive. A tense silence fell over the crew as they waited. The atmosphere was thick with anxiety, and every second felt like an eternity. Finally, Mark's voice broke through. Captain, we've got multiple contacts approaching from the northeast quadrant. They're moving fast. I'm not sure, Mark said, squinting at the screen. They don't match any known ship signatures, but they're definitely not friendly. What do we do? Jenna asked, her voice trembling slightly. We prepare for another fight, Sarah replied, her tone resolute. Get the weapons ready and alert all hands. We need to be ready for anything. The crew sprang into action, adrenaline flooding through them once again. They had just fought for their lives, and now they were faced with a new threat. As they geared up, Sarah felt the weight of leadership pressing down on her. She knew that her crew depended on her strength, and she refused to let them down. Tom, take the helm and get us into a defensive position, she instructed. Mark, stay on the scanners and keep an eye on those contacts. As they executed their tasks, Sarah took a moment to collect her thoughts. She needed to stay calm for her crew. They had faced danger before, and they had always emerged stronger. Listen up, everyone, she called out, gathering their attention. We've faced danger before, and we've come through it together. This is no different. We are Terran warriors, and we will fight for our survival. The crew responded with nods and murmurs of agreement. They understood the gravity of the situation, but they also understood the strength they found in unity. Contacts are getting closer, Mark warned, his voice tense. They'll be here in less than 5 minutes. Prepare for combat, Sarah ordered, her heart racing. We'll need to know what we're dealing with when they arrive. As they braced for impact, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. Who were these unknown ships? What did they want? She thought back to the creature they had just fought, and the horrors they had faced together. Suddenly, the ship shook violently as the first blast hit them. Alarms blared throughout the Dauntless, and the crew scrambled to their stations. Shields holding at 50%, Mark shouted over the chaos. Redirect power to the aft shields, Sarah commanded. Tom, return fire. We can't let them take us down. The Dauntless responded, energy bolts erupting from its weapons and streaking towards the incoming ships. Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline as the battle began anew. The enemy vessels were agile, weaving in and out of the Dauntless fire. But Sarah could see her crew's determination shining through. They were fighting together, just as they always had. Focus on the ship to the left, she yelled. They're trying to flank us. Tom adjusted the ship's position, and Sarah aimed her weapons, firing at the nearest enemy ship. The impact was satisfying, and for a moment, hope flickered in her chest. Direct hit, Jenna cheered, but their victory was short-lived. The remaining ships were relentless, returning fire with deadly precision. Shields down to 30%, Mark shouted, panic rising in his voice. Hold together, Sarah urged, her heart pounding in her chest. They couldn't give up now. They had fought too hard and lost too much. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the ship as another blast struck the Dauntless. Status report, Sarah yelled, trying to maintain her composure. External damage to the starboard side, Mark replied, his hands moving swiftly over the controls. We've lost power to several systems, Get the damage control team to the starboard side, Sarah ordered, refusing to lose faith. We need to stabilize the ship. The crew moved quickly, working to patch up the damage. Sarah's heart raced as she assessed the situation. They were running out of time, and she needed to think fast. "Mark, can we execute a jump?" she asked, desperation creeping into her voice. "We can try, but we need to stabilize the systems first," he replied, sweat beading on his forehead. "Then let's make it happen," Sarah shouted, determination filling her voice. "We can't let them destroy us. We need to fight for our survival." As the crew worked together to repair the ship, Sarah felt a renewed sense of hope. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger every time. They were Terran warriors, and they would fight to the last breath. With the enemy ships closing in, they worked tirelessly to regain control. The battle was far from over, but together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The edge of darkness. The Dauntless trembled as another volley of enemy fire struck. Sarah's hands clenched the control panel, her knuckles white from the pressure. They were fighting for their lives, and every decision counted. "Status report," she barked, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Shields down to 15%. Mark shouted, his eyes glued to the flashing warnings on the console. "We can't take much more of this. Get the damage control team to the starboard side now," Sarah commanded, trying to maintain focus. "Jenna, reroute auxiliary power to the front shields. We need to hold them off." "On it, Captain," Jenna replied, her fingers flying across the keys. The whir of machinery filled the room as the crew worked with a fervor born of desperation. Tom, at the helm, adjusted their course, trying to keep the Dauntless as nimble as possible. "They're still closing in," he called out, sweat dripping down his brow. "We need to make a run for it." "No," Sarah's voice cut through the panic. "We can't abandon ship. We need to show them we're not afraid." Mark's eyes widened as he watched the enemy ships draw closer. "Captain, we don't have much time left. We can't fight forever." "Just a little longer," Sarah urged, clenching her teeth. "We'll find a way out of this. We always do." In that moment, an explosion rocked the ship, throwing everyone off balance. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered. Sarah fought to regain her footing, determination surging through her veins. "Damage report," she yelled, her voice rising above the chaos. "We've lost main thrusters," Mark shouted, scrambling to regain control. "We're dead in the water." "Redirect power to the emergency thrusters," Sarah ordered, her mind racing. They had trained for this. They had prepared for the worst. "We're not out yet." As the crew followed her commands, Sarah's thoughts flashed back to everything they had endured together. Every battle, every sacrifice. They had forged a bond that could withstand anything. They were Terran warriors, and they wouldn't give in now. "Captain, we're losing hull integrity," Mark warned, panic creeping into his voice. "If we don't act fast, we're done for." "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Sarah shouted, her heart pounding in her chest. "Tom, get us moving now." With a deep breath, Tom executed a hard turn, and the Dauntless lurched to the side. The ship shuddered under the strain, but they began to move, slowly at first, then picking up speed. Come on," Sarah urged, willing the ship to respond. "We can't let them catch us." As they pulled away from the enemy ships, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. They were still alive, still fighting, but their escape was short-lived. The enemy was relentless, pursuing them with fierce determination. "Captain, they're on our tail," Jenna shouted, her eyes wide with fear. "They're firing again." "Brace for impact," Sarah yelled, gripping the control panel tightly. The ship shook violently as another blast hit them, sending sparks flying. "Shields at 5%, Mark warned. "We can't take much more." "Tom, we need to get out of their range," Sarah shouted, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Hit the emergency thrusters. With a flick of a switch, Tom activated the emergency thrusters, and the Dauntless surged forward. They broke free from the immediate danger, but Sarah knew they were still not safe. "Keep scanning for any signs of help," Sarah instructed, her eyes scanning the monitors. "We need a way out of here." As they continued to maneuver through the chaos, the crew worked together, each member focused on their task. But deep down, Sarah felt the weight of uncertainty. They had survived so much, but was it enough? "Captain, incoming contact," Mark shouted suddenly, his eyes widening. "What is it?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. "It's another ship, but it's not one of ours," he replied, confusion etched across his face. "Identify it," Sarah commanded, her voice steady. "It's hard to say," Mark said, his fingers flying over the controls. "It's showing no friendly identification." "Can we trust it?" Jenna asked, her voice trembling. "Only one way to find out," Sarah replied. "Open a channel. Let's see what they want." As Mark opened the communication line, a holographic image flickered to life. A figure appeared on the screen, dressed in a uniform that marked them as a member of a foreign fleet. "Terran vessel, this is the Vanguard. You are in distress. We can assist you," the figure said, their tone firm. Sarah narrowed her eyes, weighing her options. "What's your interest in helping us?" she asked, suspicion lacing her words. "We are not your enemy," the figure replied. "We've been tracking the hostile fleet that has been pursuing you. Our mission is to eliminate that threat." For a moment, silence filled the room. The crew exchanged glances, uncertainty etched on their faces. Could they trust this new player in the game? "Your assistance could be invaluable," Sarah finally replied, her heart racing. "But we need to know we can trust you." "We are here to protect you," the figure stated firmly. "We cannot let the enemy take you down." "Then let's work together," Sarah said, her resolve hardening. "But I need to know your capabilities. Can you provide cover fire?" "We're already on it," the figure replied. "Prepare for combat support." As the Vanguard moved into position, Sarah felt a surge of hope. They weren't alone anymore. They had allies in this fight. "Tom, keep us steady," Sarah commanded. "Mark, prepare for battle." The crew braced themselves as the new ship took aim at the enemy fleet. Sarah's heart raced, adrenaline surging through her veins. This was a turning point, and she wouldn't let it slip away. With newfound strength, the Dauntless and the Vanguard prepared for their counterattack. They were no longer just surviving. They were fighting back. And this time, they would show the galaxy that humanity would never back down. Together, they would face the darkness and emerge victorious. The dawn of victory. The battle raged on, a cacophony of explosions and blaring alarms filling the air. The Dauntless and the Vanguard fought side by side, their combined firepower creating a shield of hope against the overwhelming enemy fleet. Sarah gripped the control panel, her heart pounding as she watched the enemy ships fall one by one under the relentless assault. "Keep it up," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're making the difference." Mark's fingers danced over the controls, firing torpedoes with precision. "They're breaking formation," he exclaimed, excitement creeping into his voice. "They didn't expect us to fight back." "Jenna, keep an eye on our shields," Sarah called out, her eyes darting between the screens. "We can't afford to let our guard down." As the enemy fleet reeled from the surprise attack, Sarah felt a surge of determination. They had faced insurmountable odds, but now, for the first time, they had a chance. With the Vanguard covering their flanks, they pushed forward, engaging the enemy head-on. "Captain, I'm detecting a weak point in their formation," Mark shouted, pointing to the screen. "If we can hit them there, we can break their line." "Then let's do it," Sarah commanded, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Tom, bring us into position." The Dauntless veered sharply, maneuvering past enemy fire as they closed in on the target. Sarah's heart raced as they approached the weak spot. Every fiber of her being was focused on that moment. They were about to make history. Firing torpedoes. Mark yelled, his voice filled with fervor. The torpedoes shot out, streaking through the void of space toward the enemy ships. Explosions lit up the darkness, and Sarah's heart soared as enemy vessels began to crumble under the assault. Yes, keep pushing, she urged, her eyes locked on the view screen. The tide of battle began to shift in their favor. The enemy, caught off guard by the fierce resistance, started to retreat. The vanguard continued to unleash a barrage of fire, further destabilizing the enemy's formation. "We can't let them escape," Sarah shouted, her voice firm. "Let's finish this." "Pursuing," Tom responded, his hand steady on the controls. They chased the enemy vessels, determination burning in their hearts. As the Dauntless accelerated, Sarah could feel the adrenaline pumping through her veins. This was their moment, a chance to claim victory against overwhelming odds. The crew fought like lions, united in purpose. "Enemy ships are scattering," Mark exclaimed, a grin spreading across his face. "They're not prepared for our assault." "Don't let up," Sarah commanded, her voice steady. "We need to finish what we started." In a final, desperate maneuver, the remaining enemy ships attempted to regroup, but the Dauntless and Vanguard were relentless, cutting through their lines with precision and power. "Firing everything we've got," Mark shouted, launching another barrage of missiles. The explosions illuminated the void, a symphony of destruction that echoed their triumph. One by one, the enemy ships began to fall, their numbers dwindling as they faced the wrath of humanity. Sarah could hardly believe what she was witnessing. The tide had turned, and they were on the brink of victory. "Captain, we've taken out their flagship," Jenna shouted, her voice filled with disbelief. "Yes," Sarah cheered, her heart soaring. "This is it. We've done it." As the last enemy ships retreated, a deafening cheer erupted in the control room. The crew exchanged glances, wide-eyed with shock and joy. They had faced unimaginable odds and emerged victorious. "Status report," Sarah demanded, trying to rein in her excitement. "We've sustained damage, but we're still operational," Mark replied, his grin infectious. "Shields are down to 30%, but we've managed to repel them." "We did it," Jenna exclaimed, her face beaming with pride. "We really did it." Sarah took a deep breath, her heart swelling with pride. They had fought for their survival, for their home, and they had succeeded against all odds. "Let's send a message to the fleet," she said, her voice steady. "Let them know humanity will never back down." As they prepared to send their signal, the crew gathered around, each one sharing in the victory. They were more than just a crew. They were a family forged in the fires of battle. "Prepare to transmit," Sarah commanded, her eyes shining with determination. "We want the galaxy to know that we stand united, no matter the cost." As the message went out, Sarah felt a weight lift off her shoulders. They had faced darkness, fear, and uncertainty, but they had emerged stronger than ever. In that moment, she knew that they were not just surviving, they were thriving. They had proven that humanity would never submit, that they would always fight for their place in the galaxy. As the stars twinkled outside, Sarah looked at her crew, a smile spreading across her face. Together, they had faced the abyss and emerged victorious. The dawn of a new era was upon them, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Humanity had shown its unbreakable resolve, and the galaxy would remember their name. The Dauntless would continue its journey, a symbol of hope and courage in the vastness of space, ready to face whatever came next.